Hi, students. Okay, so let's go ahead and start today's lesson. This is Unit 11, Day 1. This is something brand new. Today's lesson is about populations and samples. And here's your learning target. Your learning target is I can understand the difference between a population and a sample statistic. So let's talk about what those mean. First of all, a sample is a subset of an entire group. It refers to a portion of the group with specific characteristics. Data collected from the sample is called a sample statistic. So here's an example. Vowels are a subset of the alphabet. So when we're talking about samples and sample statistics, they are a subset of an entire group. Here's how I like to think of it. You have a group, and a subset of that group of people would be a smaller group of people within the group. All right, let's talk about what populations means. When collecting data, the population references the entire group. So the population in this case would be this entire group. The sample statistic would be this small group right here. Data collected from the entire population is called a population statistic. So here's an example. The alphabet is equivalent to the population, while the consonants are a sample within the population. I think that's a really good example. Okay, so the following statements are populations. Determine a population sample that is part of a population. So we're figuring out a small group, and we're just coming up with these randomly. There could be many different examples that you could come up with on your own as well. I'm just going to give you a couple. So for number 1, people living in a specific neighborhood. Well, we could come up with a smaller group. We could say the elderly people within the neighborhood. So I'll just write the elderly people. Instead of all the people, what if we just chose a small group? The elderly people. And I'm going to shorten everything today. All right, number 2, families with children. We could say, well, how about families with just one child? That would be a sample. Families with one child. Okay, now next one, seniors at East High School. What about seniors who drive their cars to East High? Some seniors have to ride the bus. Some get dropped off from their family. So we could say seniors who drive. That would be a good sample. Okay, so this next one says the following statements are samples. Determine a possible population that it could be a part of. So now we're going from a small group to a large group. So instead of children who play football for the YMCA, we could make this a larger group. Instead of saying children who play football, we could say people who participate in YMCA programs. Anyone who's a part of YMCA programs. So I'll just say people who participate in participate. I'm trying to multitask, do way too many things. In YMCA programs. Okay, question 5. Students who were on the B honor roll for the first 9 weeks. Well, how about anyone enrolled during the first 9 weeks? It doesn't just have to be the students who were on the B honor roll. It could be anyone. Anyone or all people enrolled during the first 9 weeks. Okay, next one. Households that have a cable in the Riverside apartment complex. Well, what about all households in the Riverside apartment complex? What about anyone living there? So I'll just say all people living there. Not just people who have cable. All right, let's keep going. Statistical questions. So a statistical question, and I'll write this as we go, statistical question is one that can be answered with data that varies. The answer to a statistical question must differ. So the word varies and the word differ, they mean the same thing. So let's take a look at these questions down below. Complete the graphic organizer below by answering the questions based on the statistical question. So here we have our question right here. What do 7th grade students want to do for the fall festival? Well, how could we collect this data? There's many different answers. One that I'm thinking of is we could survey the students during first lunch. That's just one option. And there are so many. You can probably think of your own right now. So survey the students during first lunch. Could you say during all the lunches? Yeah. I'm just going to pick one lunch. Is the data a population or a sample statistic? This one would be a sample statistic. And why? Well, because not every student was asked. Okay, next question. What's the average grade on the semester exam in Mrs. Johnson's class? So how could we collect the data for that? We could use her grade book. That's where data is collected. Is the data a population or a sample statistic? Well, that one would be a population statistic. And why? Well, because everyone's data is collected. So I'll just put all data is collected. Okay, next one. Who do Americans want as their president? Well, how could we collect that data? I know right now there are people who use polls. That means they call around and they ask you questions, those annoying surveys. So I'll say we could use polls to call people and ask them who they're going to vote for. Would that one be a population or a sample statistic? That one would be a sample statistic because there's too many people to call. So not every single person was asked. Let's just say not every person was asked. Okay, next question. How many students in your school ride the bus home? One way you could figure out how many students in your school ride the bus home is you could ask a small portion of students. You could ask the kids in your last period of the day. You could say you could ask your 8th period classmates. Now, would that be a sample statistic or a population statistic? You're not asking everybody, so that one would be a sample statistic. And why is that? Because it would be difficult to ask every kid in the entire school. So I'm going to just put down here, if you put quotes, that means, hey, I'm writing the same thing, okay? Not every person was asked, so that one's a sample statistic. All right, so that's lesson 1. Your homework should look just like this. If you have questions, please just reach out to me or Mrs. Morris, and we'd love to help you out. Thanks for watching.